ADATA XPG v2 memory kits are optimized for the latest Intel gaming platforms. Check the link in the video description for more details. Welcome to my unboxing and overview of the Bitfenix Prodigy M. Now, if you've already heard of the Prodigy, then I won't need to explain to you what it is. It is an mATX case that is pretty stylish, has support for lots of radiators, and generally high-performance hardware in a relatively small form factor. Now, the Prodigy M was Bitfenix's response to what was, I guess, sometimes a criticism of the Prodigy, which was that for an ITX case, that is a single expansion slot motherboard case, it really wasn't that small, and Bitfenix kind of went, well, yeah, but you can put a lot of other hardware in there, like, you know, radiators and a whack ton of hard drives and all that kind of cool stuff. And users went, well, no, we want something that's the size of the Prodigy that we can put an mATX case in. That is one with 4 expansion slots. And that, my friends, is what we have here today. This is the Prodigy M, which from the outside looks basically the same as the original Prodigy. So here on the front of the case, you've got a nice open airflow grill, so you're going to be able to bring in fresh air. You've got a 5 1/4 inch drive bay right here. You've got the sort of Mac Pro-esque looking handles on the top that are made of what they call fiber flex or something along those lines, which is basically Bitfenix's way of saying they're supposed to be flexible, because a lot of people complained in the past about them bowing a little bit, so they're like, well, that's by design. On the side, we've got power, reset, headphone, microphone jacks, as well as 2 USB 3.0 ports. The finish, it actually varies a fair bit. So on the side panel here, we've got a powder-coated black, so that's a bit of a matte black. Actually looks quite nice. It's got a bit of a shine to it. Then the plastic parts on the top use their soft touch feel, so that's a soft touch plastic. And then the grills themselves use a bit of a shinier paint finish on them compared to the rest of it. At the back, yes, this is where we find the differences. So we've got a 120 or 140 millimeter fan mount, your I/O, a little bit of extra ventilation here, toolless removal of the PCI Express covers. So you just go ahead and undo this thumb screw right here, lift the whole thing up, and they're all going to come free, so I don't really want to do that because it's really, really easy to do that. All right, so this magnetic guy right here on the bottom is actually a heat shield, which is, I guess, okay, so when you look at the bottom, you find the first hint as to the unusual layout. So there's your power supply in the front of the case on the bottom. There's also mounting points for fans down here, as well as anti-vibration mounting points for 3.5 inch hard drives. So I guess the idea is if you fill the bottom with drives and you don't need those ventilation holes and you don't want the heat being exhausted by your power supply to get your hard drives hot, you might want to put this on. I suspect in practice it's not going to make that much of a difference, but hey, you've got the option should you desire it. You might have noticed we switched to a white Prodigy M case. Don't worry, we have not done anything crazy voodoo magic wise. We just happen to have a black one and a white one. The last thing left over from the original Prodigy up here is the removable fan filter / grill in the top that allows you to have access to the, yes, up to 240 millimeter slim radiator that can be installed on the top. However, it should be noted that that might interfere with some of your expandability. And once you get it open, that will become more apparent. So we're going to open up the side that has the I/O on it. Brandon actually asked me while we were unboxing it why the I/O is on the side, and the answer is because on the original Prodigy design, the entire front of the case was taken up by the 5 1/4 inch bay and ventilation. So, oh yeah, that's speaking of ventilation, the white design, just like on the original Prodigy, doesn't have the vent holes, whereas the black one does. So because it's all taken up by ventilation, the I/O is moved to the side. And because the Prodigy M is based very closely on the original Prodigy, and it wasn't a complete redesign from the ground up, well, they reused that side-placed I/O. So anyway, because it reuses most of the design of the original Prodigy, they weren't going to retool it for the I/O to not be on the side, because some people actually like it. So here on the side panel, you see a couple of 2.5 inch SSD mounts that you can actually mount to these plastic ventilated grills right here. And other than that, that basically just comes off like that. Now we see this is not the same case at all. So the original Prodigy had the power supply mounted in the back. The Prodigy M has the power come in the back, but that is using an extension cable. So you can see right here, it's wired up internally. that runs to the power supply position here in the front of the case. So this will actually plug in directly to the power supply down here, which will sit up here in the front. Also, the motherboard tray, which was horizontal in the original Prodigy, has now been adjusted to be vertical. So the motherboard is actually mounted here in an inverted position, giving you 5 PCI expansion slots, assuming that you don't use any of these, or rather this 120mm fan mount over here, which gives you a lot of flexibility because some mATX cases, even though they only have 4 slots by design, some of them put their second PCIe 8X slot at the very bottom, meaning that if you have 2 dual slot graphics cards in SLI or Crossfire, having an extra external slot like this allows you to install an additional card, such as a sound card, in between them. So I give Bitfenix a lot of credit for thinking of that. And then if you don't use it, then you don't use it. Great, install a fan there and don't worry about it. All right, so included as well, we've got 2 Bitfenix 120mm fans. So one in the bottom down here, meaning you're probably going to want to pull that heat shield out in the default configuration, and one over here. The case supports a total of 4 3.5-inch drives or 5 2.5-inch drives, and you can play around a fair bit with where they go. So you can see there are drive mounts here with the rubber vibration mounts or anti-vibration mounts being for 3.5-inch, and these little hooks, as well as these other ones over here, being for 2.5-inch drives, as well as here we go, we've got an accessory box. You can also support up to a 120mm single radiator in the back of the case, so that gives you a fair bit of liquid cooling flexibility, although not to nearly the same degree as the original Prodigy, because the motherboard wasn't taking up that much space in the original Prodigy, which is part of why you weren't able to fit that much hardware in it. From a motherboard and graphics card perspective, but you could do lots of liquid cooling stuff. So there's a USB 2 to USB 3 adapter here, so that allows you to take the USB 3 ports, plug them into a USB 2 board, and have them run in USB 2 mode, as well as all the little hardwares that you're going to need to install your system inside the case. We're going to undo the thumb screws on the other side, which will give us an even better look at the interior. Cable management is much better in the Prodigy M compared to the original Prodigy, which tended to be a bit of a challenge, although because they never released a windowed version of it, I guess it was just mostly for the OCD folks like myself who even cared. The build quality is still very solid. I mean, the Prodigy is not a cheaply, flimsy side panel built case, which is great and carries on here. We also see it has an extremely large motherboard cutout, so you're going to have no difficulty installing or uninstalling backplate mounted CPU coolers without taking out your motherboard. This also gives you another look at the front here, so you can see that the front fan options have not necessarily been reduced on paper because you still got all these mounting holes. But remember, guys, there's a power supply here, so yeah, that's not an option as much as it was before. I would probably install the power supply pulling air through the front, particularly if you get the black version of the case, which, as I mentioned before, has more ventilation due to those grills in the front. So just like the Prodigy, it's available in a variety of colors. It's mATX instead of ITX, supports fewer drives but more expansion cards, and basically it comes down to you what you want to go with. If you want the most powerful small form factor build, mATX is the way to go because it allows you to get a Rampage 4 Gene, throw something like a 30 or a 4930K or 4960X 6-core in there, and have a very, very powerful little box. Thank you for checking out this unboxing. Don't forget to like it if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, leave a comment if you're not sure what to make of this tape that's stuck to my arm here, and don't forget to check out the LinusTechTips.com forum, and as always, don't forget to subscribe to Linus Tech Tips for more unboxings, reviews, and other computer videos, and leave a comment too if you think my outro has gotten too long.